I do. We are kicking off a new sermon today, a new sermon series today. And just to empathize what Jack invited us into, I would really love for everyone to stick around after service. We're going to leave some time to celebrate what God has done, which is bring new life to people, celebrate that he has come to seek and save the lost, and he's given new life to those even in our midst. Baptism is such a special celebration, and so I want to encourage you afterwards to come join us for that. All right, well, we are going to be entering into a new sermon series called Make Room. Previous slide. There we go. Make room and building altars for the presence of God. And this is going to essentially be a series that we are going to go through for the season of Lent. We're not necessarily a liturgical church. We don't follow the Christian calendar to a T. Lent started a week and a half ago. But I do love the themes of the Christian calendar, and I love to kind of lean into it. And just a show of hands, who actually was raised in a tradition that celebrated Lent and practiced Lent? Yeah, a few hands. Who did not? Who did not have Lent as your primary experience growing up? Yeah, I'm in that camp. I did not. I went to a non-denominational church, and we didn't celebrate Lent. But one of the things I've learned to love about Lent, if you think about the most important days in the year for a Christian. A few days come to mind. Christmas, of course, important day. We celebrate Jesus coming to earth. And then Good Friday and Easter, right? And arguably Good Friday and Easter are even more important than Christmas. And yet our culture actually has this built-in period leading up to Christmas. Thank goodness for Thanksgiving. It's kind of the blocker that prevents Christmas from creeping into more of the calendar, right? But we go through the season as a culture in Christmas. We put up lights, we prepare, there's carols, and when Christmas gets here, we're kind of ready for it, right? But with Lent, with Easter, it can kind of sneak up on us. We don't have those same cultural rituals. We don't have the same things that we do. And so we want to take some intentionality to prepare our hearts for Easter, to actually set our eyes on the cross, to set our eyes on our need for a Savior. And when it gets here, to be able to actually be ready to properly celebrate everything that Easter is to us. And so that's why we're going to go through this series. We're calling it Make Room. And I want to give you the origin story of this series. And so this week is really just going to set up what's to come. But the idea for this series comes from a mentor of mine named John Tyson. He was a youth pastor, and now he pastors a church in New York City. And John is a passionate guy, and he is particularly passionate about times where God has moved in human history in just a really, really powerful way. Revivals. And so he had a story about in 2017, 2018, I can't remember exactly when it was, but he was handed a sizable check by just a friend or someone. And he said, I was praying, and I actually felt like God wanted me to give you a check. And this check is to do, God's put something on your heart, but you don't have the means to do it. And I want you to do it. God says, go ahead. And so John was like, yes, I am going on a revival tour. I'm bringing my family, and we're going to go visit the places that God has moved in powerful ways throughout human history. And so he took the whole family. They went to Europe. They went to Herrnhut, where the Moravian revival, we studied some of these last summer, the Moravian revival took place. He went to Fickenwald, where Bonhoeffer led his discipleship school in the middle of World War II. He went to Wales and studied the Welsh revival, and Ulster, the revival of Ulster. And then he found his way to the Hebrides, which the Hebrides are this really remote island off the coast of Scotland. And to get there, it's like you have to take two planes and then a train and then a boat. And like it's so remote. And what he was trying to figure out while he was going through this revival tour was, how do revivals actually happen? Like, what causes them? Is it a theology? Well, obviously not, because if you do the research of revivals, it happens across wide ranges of theologies. People actually don't agree very much together. If you look at, is it distinctives or is it tradition? And it doesn't seem to be any commonalities. And he got to this very remote island in the Hebrides, and he started to begin to talk to people. And this is actually, there's people that are still alive today that experience it. And it was just, if you haven't read the accounts of the Hebrides, it's just wild. Like God moving unbelievable ways. But he actually found there were these churches where they experienced God's outpouring. It was like crazy. And then he'd go to the next town and then nothing. And then he goes to the next town and they heard the stories of God moving like crazy. And actually what happened is there were some churches and some towns that when God moved on that island, they actually resisted it. And they were scared of it. They started accusing it. They started criticizing it. But the churches that were open actually saw some incredible things. And then he began wondering, well, why did revival happen in the Hebrides and not in Edinburgh, not in London? The big city, why was it so remote? And as he began to talk to people, as he began to read, he felt like God gave him this phrase, which we've used before, and you've probably heard, God comes where he's wanted. And if you study the revival of Hebrides, you know that it was prayed in by two old ladies who had a burden for the young in their village and would begin to stay up on Friday nights, pray all through the night for God to move in power. It was prayed in. God comes where he's wanted. And he came to the churches in the regions where they welcomed him, where they wanted him. And so he began to study one of the main leaders in this revival, Duncan Campbell. And Duncan would often speak about the need to build 4 different altars. And so I'm going to land the plane here about our series. But he said, you need to build 4 different altars. An altar of the heart, an altar of the home, an altar in the church, and an altar in a region. And when you build these 4 altars, then it's almost like an irresistible magnet for God to come and move. And so over the next 4 weeks up to Easter, we're going to be talking about building these altars week by week. An altar of the heart, an altar in the home, an altar in our church, and an altar in our city. So first of all, just some kind of baseline. What the heck are altars? It's a very Bible-y word, right? Altars, we don't use that in common language today. I'm just going to go to the altar today after church. What are altars? They're actually referenced 400 times in Scripture. And these are places of consecration. They're built to commemorate a profound encounter with the living God. And so they marked a moment. They marked a desire to give one's life fully to the Lord. God had worked in such a way in someone's life that it created a desire for someone to make something tangible to memorialize it. And so in the Old Testament, you see often idols falling into disrepair, and God is often looking for someone to come and to rebuild the idols. One of the most famous stories is the story of the prophet Elijah. You might remember he confronted the prophets of Baal, a false god, on Mount Carmel. And what happened? Elijah first restored the altar on Mount Carmel. And then it was on this rebuilt altar that God rained his fire down to confront the prophets and to prove that he was the one true living God. And so if it's true that God does come where he's wanted, then actually rebuilding broken altars and cultivating a hunger is one of the most important things we can spend our days doing. Like doing the things that we can do, rebuild altars, so that God can do the only thing that he can do, which is bring down the fire. John Tyson says, God comes where he's wanted. That's a life-changing principle. If this hits your heart and you reorient your life around it, you're in for a very different faith. God will bypass 99 lukewarm hearts to anoint the one hungry person. God will bypass 100 lukewarm families choked out by the busyness of urban American life to anoint one kingdom family. God will bypass 200 sleepy churches to put his hand on the one church that wants his presence, regardless of what kind of church they may be. So just as we open up this series, I just want to invite you to imagine if your heart was alive, burning with passion for him. If your family had one heart and mind, cultivating a desire for Jesus, right? And if your church, this church, was a furnace where people just walking in the door, they couldn't help but find their hearts get warmed towards Jesus. And if actually, imagine this, if this whole city was known for a place that says, God, we want you here. It seems so far stretched, but that's what we're going for. That's what we're praying for. That's what we're going to spend the next 4 weeks going after, building these altars. But today, just kind of intro level, setting the table a bit. The big idea, if God comes where he's wanted, we need to ask, is there room in your life for him to come? It's no good to spend a bunch of time building some altars if our life is too crowded to actually experience him if he does come. In the Old Testament, before altars are rebuilt, idols were torn down. They had to make room for something better, greater, to be built in its place. Idols don't always have to be something bad. They're just something that's taking the place of God. They crowd him out and they dull our appetite. And I actually think in our culture, I can think of no idol greater than busyness and hurry, being hectic. Psalm 24, great psalm, says, lift up your heads, you gates. Lift them, you ancient doors. Let the King of glory in. He wants to come. Revelation 3, Jesus is standing at the door of our hearts, it says his picture. He's knocking. He wants to come in. And the question is, will we open that door? Will we open up the gates? Will we make room for him? And so I want to frame this properly for us, the season of Lent. When I think of Lent, often, especially as I was growing up, I was like, oh man, that sounds awful. Who wants to do that? But I want to reframe it. What if Lent isn't about something we give up? Isn't about something like gritting our teeth and just getting through it? But rather, what if it's about something that we gain? So what if making room isn't deprivation? It's actually a doorway that leads to our greatest and most profound joy. What if the most joyful thing we can do is actually clear everything that steals our hunger away from God? And so the title of my sermon today, you've heard of FOMO, the fear of missing out. We're going to talk about JOMO, the joy of missing out. This is my attempt to connect our year of joy to our Lent series. But it's true. There is joy in actually decluttering and focusing on Jesus. I got 3 simple points for us today to unpack, and then I'll have a little exercise, and then we'll watch some baptisms. Point number 1, a divided heart makes you miserable. Divided heart makes you miserable. James 1:8 says, a double-minded man is unstable in all they do. I came across the research of a psychologist, Barry Schwartz. You may have seen this before. He did this famous study called the JAM study. The JAM study. Not like jamming away like jelly study. And what he did is he went to the specialty grocery store, and he did two kind of different displays to test to try to sell more jam. One, he did a sampling of 6 different jams. And then the second, he set up the same table, but instead of 6 jams, it was 24 different varieties of jam, 24. And the result was fascinating. The 24 jam table pulled actually more people in. It was a more attractive display. But the 6 jam table actually converted far more buyers. 30%, almost a third of people at the 6 jam table ended up buying one of the jellies, compared to only 3% at the 24 count jam display. And the conclusion he came to, and he supported it with lots more research, is that actually more options can increase interest, but it decreases commitment. Increases interest, but it decreases commitment. And there's a lot of reasons for this. Anticipated regret. What if I choose the wrong one? You know, there's 23 others I haven't had a chance to sample yet. Decision fatigue. If I don't have enough information, I need more information to be able to make this choice. Which jam am I going to pick? Higher opportunity costs. You know, if I'm buying this, it means you're rejecting 23 others. Before I was only rejecting 5. Now I'm rejecting 23. That's a lot of pressure, right? You're more comparison. You're like looking at with a critical eye. You have less gratitude. Higher overwhelm, more freezing up. I'll just come back to this later, you might think. So the key finding, more choices produce more anxiety, not more satisfaction. Now here's the bridge. You know where I'm going with this, right? We're the 24 jam table. Like we are. That's us. We've got 24 commitments. 24 good things, 24 open tabs on your Google Chrome browser. Yeah, anyone guilty? That's right. We're paralyzed. It doesn't make us, we think more options give us more choice and more satisfaction, but it's actually doing the opposite. And here's where it's important for this series and for what we're doing here. We're not going to go deep with God because we've got too much going on. We've got too much options. We just want to keep things open. Jesus actually taught about this 2,000 years ago. And it's in a parable called the parable of the sowers. Do you remember this? So he talks about the story. The kingdom of God is like this sower going out and throwing seed liberally everywhere. He's throwing so much seed. And there's 4 types of soil that the seed lands on. One is really hard ground, it gets stomped away. Another is, the birds snatch it up before it gets a chance to get rooted. But the third soil is what's really interesting to me. And the purpose of this parable is he's saying, hey, there's lots of different conditions when the word goes out, when a sermon like this gets preached, when you read the Bible, when the truth comes. The condition of the soil where it lands is really, really important. Good soil has staggering fruit, staggering levels of fruit. But there's other soils that don't. And the third soil, he actually gives us a warning. And I think we live in a third soil culture, a 24 jelly culture, right? Mark 4:18 through 19 says this. This is Jesus explaining what he's talking about, the third soil. Still others, like seed sown among thorns, hear the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth and the desires for other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful. So you've got this image of plants growing up. Actually, something's happening. The seed has taken root, but it grows up among thorns, and it chokes. Strong word. Chokes out the growth. And I think of the 4 soils, the first 3 soils. Yeah, of the 4 soils that Jesus talks about, it's actually the third soil that makes us feel most miserable. It's the most anxiety-producing. Because you want the things of God. It's a real desire. It's a real hunger in there. But there are things competing for your soul. And so you're being pulled apart, choked suffocated? Anyone feel like your life is being pulled apart right now in different directions? Yeah, we can all relate. Third soil people aren't hard-hearted. They're not shallow. They're just busy. They're the ones that with lives that look good on the outside, calendars are full. But it's actually the most dangerous soil, I think, because there's growth for a while, but the thorns don't announce themselves. You might not even know they're there. And so the antidote to this is a pure heart, a single-minded heart, a wholehearted person. Psalm 86:11, David prays, "Give me an undivided heart, that I might fear your name." Jeremiah 29, this promise is crazy. Verse 13, "You will seek me and you'll find me when you seek me with all your heart." God is looking for wholehearted worshipers, and divided hearts are actually making us miserable. Point number 2, the gap is a gift. The gap is a gift. If you're feeling that tension, if you raise your hand, yeah, I'm feeling torn apart. I have a divided heart. I'm feeling it. At least I'm at risk of it. I have some good news for you. There's actually a gift buried in there. Psalm 63. We say this often. It's one of our verses that really propels us forward as sanctuary. It says, "You, God, are my God. Earnestly I seek you. I thirst for you. My whole being longs for you. In a dry and parched land where there is no water, I have seen you in the sanctuary. I've beheld your power and your glory. Because your love is better than life, my lips will glorify you." David teaches us a really important lesson here. He starts out, he's saying, "You're my God. Therefore, I will seek you." And this is important. I want us to get this. It's not just, if I seek you well enough, if I seek you hard enough, then you will be my God. No, we seek him because he's found us. He's our God. He's the one that comes after us. A longing for God, even a sense of his absence and wishing there was more of him, is itself evidence that God has touched you. We know too much. We've experienced it. If you've got a gap between where you want to be and where you are, if God were truly not at work in your life, you would not miss him. I'll say it again. If God were truly not at work in your life, you would not miss him. This deeper sense of absence, or the deeper the sense of the absence, the bigger the gap between how much you want to want him and how much you actually want him, is actually the greater the evidence of his presence. In college, I went through a long season where I didn't feel God's presence as much, and the truth was I was angry at him. There were some things that I encountered, things that I discovered, and it just went through a long season, multiple years of being angry at God. But I couldn't abandon him because I had known too much. I had seen him. I'd experienced him in my life before, and I couldn't just walk away. And it was what I had experienced before that I think actually ultimately drew me back to him. It was that awareness that I wanted more of God than I had in my life was actually weirdly encouraging. It encouraged me, no, actually there is a God. He has come after me. He has known me before. He is my God. And it's that actually propels worship in us and propels hunger in us. Now, to be clear, I think every single human, whether they're followers of Christ or not, have this general sense of spiritual hunger, an ache for something more. But it takes the work of God in your life to bring you to the point where you're really seeking him, the real God. Not just what he can give you, not just a God that fits in a box where you can understand it all, but him, God himself. So you've tasted and you want more. I've seen you in the sanctuary. I beheld your power and glory. I want more. That's evidence that he's jealous for you. He wants you. He's found you. He's calling you yours, and you get to call him yours. And so maybe this is a tough topic for you. You're like bracing for this series. It touches the nerve because you want to want God, but you actually feel his absence. And you want to want God, but if you're honest, you don't want him as much as you want to want him. The fire has waned. And I just want to encourage any of us in that place today, feeling too far from God actually indicates that you belong to him. If you didn't, why would it be nagging you in the first place? And could this actually be an opportunity for God saying, I am your God. You know me. You were made for me. Don't shove that desire away. Don't crowd it out. Let it breathe. Let it breathe. And maybe this season, you just need to be honest with yourself about how much you've numbed that desire, but it's there. And if you just sit with your soul alone in the presence of God, if you make a little room, that desire will begin to surface slowly and surely. It will begin to reveal itself, and it will lead you to say, my God, I earnestly seek you. So if you're here this morning, there's a gap. Please know this. The gap is evidence that he's placed that desire there. He's working in your life, and let that be the fuel that reignites your heart and actually burns away everything that's choking out that desire. So just be clear, making room isn't about duty. It's not about gritting your teeth and trying harder. It's about cultivating desire. Please don't let this week and the next 4 weeks make you feel beat up or beat down, like you're never going to actually be able to seek God enough. That's turning the desire into duty. The obligation of duty. He loves to be with his kids. He longs to be with you. And if you're his, he's placed in you, I guarantee it, a desire for you to be with him as well. And so where does that desire lead us? To the altar. Point number 3. The altar is where joy lives. Psalm 43 connects this all brilliantly for us. Verse 3 through 4. Send me your light and your faithful care. Let them lead me. Let them bring me to your holy mountain, to the place where you dwell. It says, then I will go to the altar of God, to my God, my joy and my delight. I will praise you with the lyre, O God, my God. You see the connection there? You'll go to the altar. You'll sacrifice. You'll go to lay it down. And I'll be really sad that I left it down. No, he says you're going to be going to his joy and his delight. Psalm 84 reinforces this message. It's another passage we talk about a lot. Verse 5, blessed are those whose strength is in you, whose heart is set on pilgrimage. The context here, the people are in exile. They're longing and yearning for the old temple, the place of God's presence. And it says their hearts are set on, fixed, decided. And look what it describes of them. It says they're blessed. Blessed are those whose eyes are set on pilgrimage. They're happy. But blessed is just another word for happy, joyful. What we fix our eyes on determines our joy, not your current circumstances. It's what you fix your eyes on. Verse 10 and 11, it says, better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those whose walk is blameless. Those who've chosen a single direction, chosen God's dwelling place, aren't grieving what they've left behind. We think that by leaving behind some things, we'll be missing out. But what if the joy that we're pursuing is actually found in us missing out, in us leaving the 24 behind. So what if this Lent season, it's not actually about what you're giving up, but actually what are you choosing? Are you deliberately choosing the thing that's going to give you joy? I've got an illustration here. It's been making the rounds on a TED Talk. Some of you may have seen it. But it might be small for some of you, but I'll try to dictate what's on the screen. Every circle here represents 1 month of your life, assuming that you're 18 years old and you live to age 90. Every circle represents how much, a single month in your life. And so obviously, some of those months are taken up. Some of our time is taken up with things that we just got to do. So the light blue is sleep. So if you're 18 years old and you live to 90, that is how many months that you are going to sleep. Not enough, if you ask me. I want that whole thing blue. All right, the orange is how much you got to work. The red is driving. The pink is eating. The green is chores. The blue is hygiene, or going to the bathroom. So you got actually just, the white is all your free time remaining. And honestly, the quality of our life is probably largely determined by how we spend that free time, right? That is what you can choose to do with your time. So how do we choose to use it? Go to the next slide. That black represents screen time of the average American. What if it's not so much about what you're missing, about what you're gaining when you choose to lay that down? Jesus is looking at us and giving us an invitation to choose the better thing. The person who gives up what they cannot keep to gain what they cannot lose, he or she is no fool. Someone wise said that. I don't know who. I think it was Eliot. T.S. Eliot? Yes? I'm getting some affirmation here. What if the place of your greatest sacrifice is the same place of your greatest joy? And here's why all of this is true. I'm going to bring it home here. We worship a God who's already sacrificed everything for us. He went all in on us. He gave his son to die on a cross for us. The cross is the ultimate altar, right? And it's the place of the greatest sacrifice and actually the greatest joy collide. Hebrews 12:2 says, "For the joy set before him, Jesus endured the cross." He didn't grit his teeth through it. He wasn't he was sorrowful about it, but he didn't despise it. He actually says he had joy. He was fueled by joy. And what was the joy? It's the joy of getting us back. The joy of getting you back. That's why he went to the cross. He went to the cross to make room for you in his Father's house. And if the Son of God found his deepest joy at the place of his greatest sacrifice, then maybe, just maybe, the place where we lay something down isn't where joy dies. It's where joy begins. The joy of missing out. Richard, would you mind coming up? He's going to set an atmosphere of us as we kind of roll towards a completion here. Again, this is just a setup for the next 4 weeks. I encourage you to come back, engage. We're going to have some very specific practices. We'll have a 30-day devotional starting next week for us to go through as a community together leading up to Easter through this series. But remember the soils, going back to Mark 4. We started this sermon talking about thorny soil, the crowded life. What if this Lent season is actually about becoming good soil? Like clearing away the weeds, turning up the earth, and then trusting that God is going to grow up something beautiful in the midst of it. And that's what making room is. It's preparing the soil of your heart for what God wants to do. And the whole key to unlocking that parable of the 4 soils is actually the staggering amount of fruit that can be produced. When the seed lands on good soil, it says 30, 60, even 100 times return on that. It's like he can't wait to meet with us. He can't wait to produce fruit. He can't wait to grow something beautiful. He's just looking for some soil that's ready. A.W. Tozer says, complacency is a deadly foe of all spiritual growth. Acute desire must be present, or there will be no manifestation of Christ to his people. He waits to be wanted. Too bad that with many of us, he waits so long, so very long in vain. And the thesis of this series is something that Charles Finney actually said. He said, God is just a pent-up revival. Like he's waiting to meet us. He's waiting to refresh us. He's waiting to pour out his Spirit on us. He's waiting. He's saying, oh my goodness, I want to see a heart that's fully mine. I want to see a family that's set their eyes on me. I want to see a church that says, no, Jesus, we want you here. And I want to see a city that's coming together and saying, no, God, come, Holy Spirit, we're desperate for you. And I just want to say, if you're right now bored with your walk with God, I want to lovingly just say, I promise you, God's not the one that's boring in this relationship. He's got so much for us. He really does. And so I just want, this is no pressure, no guilt, but this is just an open invitation to kind of clear the tables and to say, no, we're gonna make some good soil. And we're going to let God surprise us with delight and joy. He's got good fruit for us. His desire to meet with you way outpaces our desire to meet with him. It'll blow your mind. So I actually want to invite you, just try it out. See if it's true. Make a little space for him and see what God does over this next month. So, how do we actually do this? Like very practically. I want to get practical in this series. And there's 3 things I want to invite you to consider doing. I'm not asking you to overhaul your life. I actually just want to suggest 3 simple practices. And just pick one. And I think there will be 60, 100-fold return on this investment. But first is just this. Practices in making room. What if you would commit to 5 minutes a day? That's just 5 minutes a day. Of just practicing solitude. Yeah, you can stay on that screen. Sorry, next one. 5 minutes of solitude per day. And you just say it every day, maybe when you wake up, maybe after you get coffee, all you're gonna do, set a little timer and just not do anything. Just sit in the presence of God by yourself for 5 minutes. I do this every once in a while and it feels like 5 hours. You'd be surprised at our capacity, not just be still. But actually, that simple thing. Not only do I feel God speaking to me in that 5 minutes, actually, I typically don't. It's typically very uneventful. But yet, it just sets the tone for my day to actually pause and make room and hear Him working and speaking through it. Maybe another practice you could choose from. Pray through one altar per day. So I mentioned 4 altars. The altar of your heart, the altar of your family, your home, the altar of the church, and then the altar of the city. And I've just begun in my personal life to develop a practice that's been really fun. I'll pick one of those every single day. So Monday is my altar of the heart. And I just pray, God, stir afresh in me a desire for your name. And I just, like, as I'm praying that day, I'll just pray, God, over the altar of my heart, I want to want you more than I want you. Help me want to want you, God. Make me zealous for your name. Tuesday, altar of the family. I'll just pray over my family. Pray over Kelsey and Josie and Elliot and Ollie and my sisters and my parents, and just praying that God would meet this family. And then the next day, pray for the church. I pray for you all. And it's just a way to break up my week and not feel like I have to pray for everything every single time. But it's just made a huge difference. And maybe the invitation is just, hey, over this next month, up until Easter, I'm just going to pick a day of the week and pray over one altar every single day. Maybe the third thing is actually choosing one thing that you feel God calling you to lay down. One thing that might be dueling your desire and your hunger for God. Maybe it is your phone, a digital fast. We actually have a sister church their whole church is doing a digital fast for the month of March, and they've got some great resources. I'll put that out on our WhatsApp. If you're not on our WhatsApp, let me know. I'll get you on there so you can see that. Maybe you feel called. I'm actually going to go through a digital fast, and there's kind of like different levels of how you can do that. So one more extreme and one more kind of entry level, if that's helpful for you. Second, maybe it could be giving up just some entertainment for the month and just say, I'm going to dedicate that time to Jesus. Maybe it could be actually fasting food, a meal. I don't know what, it could be anything. What is it for you that might dull your appetite for God? And maybe there's just an invitation for you to choose one thing this season to lay down, to stir up your hunger and affection and desire for Jesus. I'm just gonna have Richard play over us for a few minutes and just give us time to actually not just rush into the next thing, but to ask Jesus, hey, what would it look like to make room in my life? So a couple questions that might be helpful. What is one thing, these are questions you can ask God. So a few minutes of silence. What is one thing that's crowding out your hunger for God? And what would it feel like to lay it down? The second question, where do you sense the gap between how much you want God and how much you want to want God? And what is that gap telling you? And the third is, what does it look like to till your soil, the soil of your heart this season? Maybe it's one of those three practices. You just say, I'm going to pick one, and I'm going to ask God to meet me in it. So let's do some work with Jesus. I'll just take 2 or 3 minutes. Often we rush off and we don't get a chance to actually apply and ask God what he's doing, but this is so important. Probably the most important is actually, what does it mean for me now? Not just be hearers of the word, but we want to be doers and apply it. And this will set the tone for this whole series. Sound good? We'll be back in a few minutes.